So first of all, thank you very much, everybody, for signing on and joining us today. This is work that we are really excited about and important for our entire state. So we are excited to have our friends from MDES today. You're going to meet them in just a second, but we just want to say thank you to them. They have worked with us over the last couple of months, really given us some great training and education. So the collaboration it's important that we talk about across the state is actually happening between the two of us. So we just want to say thank you personally from me to you two and the rest of your team. I was actually emailing with Director Ashley this morning, so he's been helpful every time I've reached out. But these are the actual boots on the ground, so we want to make sure that we highlight them and the work that they do. And I don't want to throw you all a curveball, but before you jump in, I think it's really important. And one of the things that we've tried to do is educate Mississippians on what it is exactly that we do as an agency. So if y'all could kind of start there before you dive into our topic for the day, I would really appreciate that. But to our topic of the day, this is something that I hear about across the state. So when I saw this topic come up, I was actually excited to join myself. So I'm going to be a participant today. So I look forward to learning from you too. But we just want to again say thank you. The work that you do every single day is important to our state, protecting our employees, Mississippians across this great state. So you are very important, and the work that you do is appreciated. So you may not hear that often, but I wanted to tell you thank you myself. So with that, we've got two experts here today from MDES, Miss Eloise Herndon and Miss Virginia Wilkinson. So they are going to tell us first a little bit about MDES and then launch into our topic for the day. So again, personally, thank you for what you do and look forward to learning some more from you today. So take it away.
Thank you. I'm Eloise Herndon, of course, with MDES, and this is one of my most important staff person here is Virginia Wilkinson. So I oversee 5 federal programs here at MDES, and my 2 biggest programs are the H2A, H2B, which is the temporary non-agricultural and agricultural programs, and then the Wagner-Pizer Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Outreach and the State Monitor Advocate. Those work together, and both of those programs, 3 of those programs, I guess, touch each other because we are reaching out and hopefully meeting the needs of 1, 2, 3 people who these programs affect, and that is the U.S. farmer. We want to make sure that our U.S. farmers, it's very important to me, that our U.S. farmers understand their responsibilities when it comes to participating in these programs, so that they don't incur any type of penalties when wage and hour comes to visit, and just to make sure they're doing the right thing. And then those guest workers who come and work in our fields every year in the state of Mississippi so that we can have what we want on our tables, and our local workers who do the same thing as those H2A workers, but many times they don't have the benefits of a corporate company benefits to take advantage of for themselves or for their families. And that's what the Migrant and Seasonal Farm Worker outreach team does. And she'll give you a lot of that information of resources that we try to provide for them, and have done a lot of research. Virginia's been excellent in researching and reaching out to a lot of different organizations who provide many benefits to migrant seasonal farm workers. So I guess we'll get started with the program or with our PowerPoint. So we're reviewing the difference between the H2A and the H2B certification program. And a lot of this came when we had our collaboration visit, an on-site visit with your staff and MBAT, because we shared how different the programs are. One is very regulated and very, there's those narrow gates, and the other one is kind of open, um, and which is a concern. So next slide. These are the topics we'll discuss: the H-2A temporary agricultural program, the migrant and seasonal farm workers, H-2A certification process, the industries that utilize H-2A workers in Mississippi, the employer guidelines for H-2A employers, the migrant and seasonal farm worker known as MSFW outreach, what that entails, the resources that we provide to H-2A workers, both local and guest workers, a collaboration in the H-2A program, how important it is, the H-2B temporary non-agricultural program, the H-2B certification process, and the employer guidelines, and how businesses can help support these programs with us. Next slide. So the H-2A temporary agricultural labor certification program allows U.S. employers to bring guest workers, known as foreign nationals, to the United States to fill seasonal and temporary work, and that is migrant and seasonal farm workers for agricultural jobs for which U.S. workers are not available. And according to the regulations, those temporary needs must meet the following: a one-time occurrence, seasonal need, a peak load need, or an intermittent need, no longer than 10 months. Now, with those migrant farm workers, the seasonal farm worker is a person who travels to the job site so that the farm worker is not reasonably able to return to his or her residence that same day. A seasonal farm worker is an individual who is employed or was employed in the past 12 months in farm work or of a seasonal nature or temporary nature as well, and is not required to be absent overnight from their home or place of residence, and known as the local workers. So with that migrant worker, this also includes the 4-year green card holder who works in America. Both those U.S. workers and green card holders, many of them will migrate from state to state following the crops for available work. Next slide. The H-2A certification program, the filing of a job order with the state workforce agency known as the SWA, and we're going to use a lot of acronyms because these programs use a lot of acronyms. The H-2A application is called an ETA 790. It is filed with the Chicago National Processing Center, CNPC, so that participating employer can request as many workers as possible that he needs to clear, plant, and harvest his crops. The employer can file as many 790s per season that they feel they need to add additional workers. That 790 must be filed no more than 75 calendar days and no less than 60 calendar days before the date of need, which is a date they expect those workers to be on their farm. That ETA 790 is then uploaded into the Department of Labor's online system, which is called the Foreign Labor Application Gateway System, known as the FLAG. And so we work out of a queue. Every state has a queue, a flag queue. So with Mississippi, the 2 peak filing seasons are first November through February, and then July through August, which is the harvest season. So this year, so far, past 2 quarters, which begins October 1st and ended March 31st, we've had 500 applications filed so far. This year, those requests that have been filed, Those guest workers, the first quarter was for 2,784 workers, H-2A visa workers, and the second quarter is for 3,925 workers. We have new participating employers every quarter. And basically, when we ask the question, why have you started using the program? 100% is because their local workers have aged out and they can't replace them anymore. No one applies for those jobs. So far, the past 2 quarters, we've had 27 new participating employers. Last year, total, we had 51, and it grows and grows every year. Last year, we had a total of 500 plus employers who participate in the program in Mississippi who have filed applications. So now those H-2A applications, as well as H-2B, are filed via an H-2A agent or a lawyer. So for Mississippi, 98% of those applications are filed by H-2A agents. 1% is from lawyers that work for those H-2A employers, and 1% is by the employers who are brave enough to tackle the filing of a 790 through its entire process. Next slide. The SWA, us, MDES, we have 30 days to perform an OSHA migrant housing inspection when that application pops in our flag queue. When an application pops in our queue, we have 7 days to review that application, to approve it, and create that job order in the Mississippi Works. And this includes weekends and holidays. And in that time frame of November through January, we'll have 400 applications. So it is a challenge, to say the least, to review those applications to make sure that the federal language is present. Because once we create a job order, that application becomes a binding contract for any worker who applies for the job and is hired, whether they're the U.S. national workers, locals, or those H-2A visa holders. The Department of Labor analysts will monitor the submission of the required documents uploaded into their cases, which includes a worker compensation that is required by the H-2A employer, vehicle insurance, and the statement that they have enough vehicles to transport their workers every day to and from the work site and to their housing, and the recruitment validation form validating that they did attempt to file or hire and advertise the job for local workers first. The Department of Labor will issue every state a supply state. There are 3 surrounding states where every state will have to, if they have the opportunity and the manpower, to submit those job orders in their state systems from the other surrounding states in case any of their local workers want to travel to those 3 states for work. And ours is Louisiana, Florida, and Alabama. In October through March, so far, we have inspected 643 houses. We've created 836 job orders last year for the entire year. Next slide. The requirements for a participating H-2A employer is they do have to demonstrate their efforts to recruit U.S. workers. Their job order, when we place it in the state system, it is open for any U.S. worker to apply or inquire about applying for that job order up to 50% of the contract date. It stays open in every state. It's that way with every state. And that employer is required and obligated to reach out to any U.S. worker who has clicked that button in our system that says, I want to apply for this job. The visa expenses, the employer is responsible for covering the entire cost of the processing of the H-2A visa. And that includes contacting the recruiter from whatever country that they are getting their workers from, paying for the background check, the person to person, whether it be, and with a visa, it has to be a virtual application and an interview conducted. And that visa is to be kept, even though the employer pays for that visa belongs legally by federal regulations to that contract worker. It will have the name of the farmer, that farm entity on his contract on that visa, and that is their ID the entire time they are in the U.S. working, and that is their safety net, and it must stay with that U.S. worker. Excuse me, the visa worker. The housing amenities that the employer is required to provide. He must provide safe housing that meets the OSHA migrant housing standards. That includes everything. The house, utilities, furniture, all the amenities in there, paper goods, laundry soap, all paper goods, everything for the entire contract. The only out-of-pocket expense that the guest worker provides for themselves are their groceries and the personal hygiene needs. The employer is required to provide daily transportation to and from their work site to their home, back to the housing, the H-2A housing, and that one day a week for them to do their personal shopping for the week for personal items and groceries. The outbound and inbound transportation, the employer is required to cover the cost for those workers traveling from their home country to the work site, and when the contract is up, paying their transportation outbound back home. The wages, the employer must pay that agricultural employment wage rate, which is known as AWER, and that rate of pay is determined by the Department of Labor, different for every state based on the state's makeup, and the U.S. workers also are to be paid that AWER rate. They cannot be paid minimum wage. They must be guaranteed at least 75% of the contracted hours. There's a calculation that the employer must use every week, because when it's raining and they don't work, they have to at least meet 75% of that week's hours that were given on that contract. And MDES, we are the administrators of this program. However, the Wage and Hour Division are the enforcers of the H-2A and H-2B program. And so we do have a memorandum of understanding with the Wage and Hour. We work very closely with them. We do outreach with them. We've been asked to attend inspections, on-site audits when there have been workers who their housing does not meet anymore the requirements of the housing amenities, the OSHA regulations. The employer is required to do those random weekly, bi-weekly housing checks to make sure that it continues and consistently meets the OSHA regulations. If it doesn't, and they get audited, they will be cited a penalty. So we work closely with Wage and Hour to make sure that our employers are aware and meet that regulation and standard. Next slide. Mississippi's agricultural season is typically March until the end of November. But we have seen a shift in some of those filing dates, and a lot of that has been due to the price of the commodity. A lot of employers, when they let their H-2A workers go, and during November, when it's, February, when it's usually a downtime, they have been discovering that that is when their whatever crop they have in storage, that's when they're going to get the best price for their commodity. So they have been filing for one or two workers who's going to be able to help them to get their crop that to their to the vendors. And our farm workers industries mostly used in Mississippi are soybean, forestry, which also H2B uses as well, corn, cotton, cattle and calves, catfish, sweet potatoes, and for anybody who didn't realize, Mississippi is the sweet potato capital of the world. Rice, greenhouse and nursery, and bees. Next slide. Now I will turn it over to our Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Outreach, Virginia.
Hello, welcome. As you know, my name is Virginia. I do outreach for farm workers. So the H-2A temporary agriculture program contains an outreach component that is managed under the Wagner-Peiser Act. So what do? We, or I, because I'm only one, locate and contact and inform migrant seasonal farm workers that are not being reached by normal intake activities conducted by our local wind job centers. So I meet them where they live, where they work, and where they gather. So where they work would be the farm itself, or even the field if they're working. Where they live would be H-2A housing, or for our local workers, it would be their homes. And where they gather, their gathering places usually include grocery stores, laundromats, churches, or anywhere that a farm worker could gather. Next slide, please. Field visits are an important aspect of our outreach. As part of the H-2A Agricultural Clearance Form, ETA 790 regulations, the employer must allow outreach staff to visit workers. For the H-2B program, there's no regulation for allowing an outreach worker to visit the workers, the H-2B workers. While conducting outreach visits, outreach staff is responsible for providing information about the employment service, employment-related law complaint system. Many farm workers do not know that they can file complaints about their employer. We also provide them with education and explain to both local and H-2A farm workers their farm workers' rights as they pertain to their job description. This is outlined in the Federal Codes of Regulation as well as the H-2A Agricultural Clearance Form. While conducting the visits, we are expected to be aware and have a keen sense of what is happening in their working and living conditions. And we also provide public and private resources from organizations that are catering to migrant seasonal farm workers. And that also includes nonprofit organizations. So that's what I do while I'm out in the field. Next slide, please. Part of my job is to also provide them information about our local jobs centers. So when we are in the presence of a local worker, we provide them with the same services that a farm worker can receive at their local job centers. So this includes helping them complete an MS Works profile and fill out any available applications for services, refer migrant seasonal farm workers to job available posts, help complete job center complaints, employer complaints, or even apparent violations, forwarding those complaints to our complaint rep or our local manager for the job centers. Also, the outreach staff has a close working relationship with the WIN job centers. This is important for conducting referrals to supportive services and career services offered at the local job centers. We are also providing them with transportation to the local job centers and other appropriate agencies. Now, logistics for transportations are still in progress here with MDES, and we hope to be able to provide these services in the future. Next slide, please. Now, a crucial part of migrant seasonal farm worker outreach involves working closely with various organizations and businesses across Mississippi. Through partnership with local entities, we can strengthen our outreach efforts by reaching a broader audience and educating the public effectively. There are three main components. I'm sorry, am I in the wrong one? I probably am. Sorry, resources. So resources, those, if you look at the slide presented to you, those are all the resources that I provide to the farm workers when I am out on the field. So if you are a business that has any services or any resources that could pertain to migrant seasonal farm workers, we would love to include you in our packets, because when we're out there, we want to make sure we give them everything that we can to help them with just their everyday life. So yeah, those are all our resources. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so collaboration, that's the one that I was talking about. So it's a crucial part of migrant seasonal farm work outreach. So there's three main components that are extremely helpful to creating very strong collaboration. So the first one is showcasing resources, which means that if you have a resource and you're a business that has a resource, we would love to put it in our packets and take it with us, as well as giving you our information so you can display it in your businesses, so it could reach a broader audience and also could reach as many farm workers as possible. Another thing is participating in business events. So we do try to participate actively in industry-specific events. It's essential for establishing connections and increasing our visibility for our program. And the last one is a shared outcome. Collaborating with organizations that serve our target audience enables us to accomplish shared objectives, leading to a greater impact and influence, while also fostering stronger relationships and trust within our communities. So today's event is actually possible because we had made a possible collaboration between El Pueblo, which is a nonprofit organization in Forest, Mississippi, MBAT, and MBI. So that's it for me, and I'm gonna allow Ms. Eloise to address the H-2B program and also discuss how businesses can contribute to our efforts of addressing gaps in the regulations.
The H-2B temporary non-agricultural program certification, again, also allows U.S. employers to bring guest workers to the United States to fill temporary non-agricultural jobs for which U.S. workers are not available. The temporary needs must be established as follows according to the regulations: seasonal need for up to a year, a peak load need for up to a year, an intermittent need for up to a year, or a one-time occurrence for 3 years. However, with Mississippi, we do not have employers who file for a 1-year time frame. It's always pretty much just that seasonal, which is up to 10 months. That's the most common with the H-2B. Next slide. Now here's the difference between the H-2B and the H-2A program. As you recall, the H-2A program, the employer, there is no limit to the amount of visas that they can apply and pay for, provide for workers that they feel they need. Now with H-2B, there are 2 times of the year windows of filing that the Department of Labor, along with Department of Homeland Security, will make an announcement of those 66,000 visas that will be allowed that fiscal year. The first one is that first shift of 33,000. And so when that announcement is made, any employer who uses the H-2B program, it's a mad dash to apply for an application for however many visas they're requesting and needing it for workers, because once that 33,000 is gone, the filing and the window for those work visas are gone. There have been times, though, that the Department of Homeland Security and DOL have announced additional visas that would be added, but it doesn't happen every year. So there's the difference there with the visas, number one. The employer's request they must first request a prevailing wage determination for the job opportunity in the area that they are intending employment through the Department of Labor. Within 75 to 90 days prior to the date of need, the employer submits a job order into the state workforce agencies once this announcement's made for serving the area of the intended employment. Now, the difference between H-2A and H-2B, the H-2A has that ETA 790 that every state uses. It is a form document through the Department of Labor. However, with the H-2B, there is no set form. Every state can make their own H-2B application that is made available on their job website. It must, however, have the pertinent information, but the flow, they don't all look the same. Let's just say that. The employer has to submit that application that they obtained through the the state's website, and it gets submitted into the flag as well. Now, the difference as well is that the Chicago National Processing Center reviews the H-2B application, as well as the State Workforce Agency. We do as well. And it must meet the authorities authorizes recruitment for U.S. workers as well. Now, the difference again between the H-2A and H-2B, we have with the H-2A those 7 days to review and create the job order in our state system. However, with the H-2B, because there's only that cap of that 33,000 first visa allotment, they will file for up to those 90 days. The work won't start up for another 90 days. So the job order is not created immediately within those 7 days. The process is the Chicago National Processing Center. They do the final review, and they will issue the notice of acceptance, the NOA, to the State Force Work Agency and to the filer that the job order can now be created. And
Miss
Can
Miss
you?
Hello. Yeah, we got you now. I was just about to
Okay.
say I think we lost you for a second.
Sorry, I touched something that I shouldn't have. The H-2B employer requirements continued with the wages. Again, they must contact and obtain the prevailing wage from the National Prevailing Wage Center, and they must pay that prevailing wage or higher, again, to both the H-2B worker and the local corresponding worker, U.S. worker as well. And they must as well include the 70% contract hours that they have to guarantee as well. Now, the visa expense, the employer must either advance all visa, border crossing, and visa related expenses to the H-2B worker, or pay them directly, or reimburse as such expenses in the first work week. The difference again between H-2A and H-2B. The employer can make the agreement with their H-2A workers if they choose to pay their border crossing and their expense themselves first. And many times that happens to those H-2A workers who have been coming for years to work on the same farm with the same employer. But the regulations state that the employer is not required to pay that H-2A worker who has given the out-of-pocket expense for themselves, where this is related to, up until 50% of the contract date is completed. So they have that open window of time frame when it comes to reimbursement. However, many of them do because they're their workers that they've been there with them for years. So they will pay them on that first paycheck. But again, the regulations is it's not it's required by H-2A by 50% contract date. H-2B is just the first week. The outbound and inbound transportation must pay, the employer must pay the transportation expenses again for the guest workers from the country of origin to the work site and the return home by the end of the work contract. Now here's the disturbing part. The housing. The regulations state with H-2B, the housing, the employer is given the option to provide the worker with board, lodging, or other facilities. Whereas the H-2A, the employer is required to provide the housing that meets the OSHA regulations. That daily transportation, again, if applicable, the state that the employer will provide daily transportation to and from the work site. In H-2A, they are required to provide the transportation, and it must be suitable transportation and sufficient transportation for each number of workers. The location of employment, the employer can determine which and how many states the worker can travel to on that contract for work. Again, the difference with the H-2A, we have only a few employers who have work on a bordering state, and that's Louisiana and Arkansas. We have a few employers who have farmland on that side. However, with the H-2B, what's most disturbing for us is there is no limit to how many states. So for instance, this year, we have one employer who has requested 90 workers, and the contract is they will be traveling through 38 states. And when the housing is an option, that is just unacceptable. That is a housing nightmare, a logistic nightmare. I can't imagine any employer logistically trying to figure out between 38 states that you're traveling, your 90 workers are traveling to, how many hotel rooms that you're going to guarantee that you're going to have for all of those 90 workers within that time frame, however many dates there are, how many months or weeks you're working in one state moving to the next state. And it is very, very common for those H-2B employers to put as many workers in a motel room as they can fit on the floor. With H-2A, there is only one worker allowed per bed, 50 square feet per worker per bedroom. So this is one of those areas that is very disturbing for us. The next slide. The Mississippi peak season is April 1st to September 30th. The industries that use H-2B workers are landscaping and groundkeeping, which is the most popular, widely used, resort and hospitality services as well, hotel maids, amusement and recreation, meat and poultry, which also H-2A can use as well. Forestry and conservation, again, H-2A can use forestry as well. Construction, food and service processing, non-farm animals, and we just kind of chuckled on that one. I don't know what non-farm animal that might be, maybe a breeder, a dog breeder, and retail sales. Next screen. How can businesses help? Businesses may interact with employers and workers on our H-2A or H-2B programs regularly. And if you notice something suspicious, report it. I think we all have that inner compass when it comes to seeing something that just doesn't feel right. Motel owners should monitor the occupancy levels in rooms closely, because like I mentioned, it is common for H-2B workers to be cramped in overcrowded motel rooms. The other regulation with difference between H-2A and H-2B, H-2A employers can use motels. However, they are required to provide us the contract with a motel, and they're required to provide us the last fire marshal inspection, and they're required to provide us with a contract that they have with a local restaurant that is going to be providing those 3 meals for those workers, because they won't have a kitchen to cook in. The difference between H-2A and H-2B housing. If you encounter an H-2A or an H-2B or a local worker enrolled in either of these programs who are voicing worries to you, please direct them to MDES and for our workforce services for assistance. We would definitely be grateful to help those people. If there is, by regulations, we have 5 business days to address with an employer concerns that we have been given, and if it's something that we cannot address within those 5 days and resolve, then it gets pushed to either EEOC if it's applicable, or to the Wage and Hour Division. And again, we have that MOU with Wage and Hour Division, so they have been great in just taking those complaints and opening an investigation. Sharing our contact information with program details that can help raise awareness about state staff who are available to support the local farm workers, H-2A and H-2B workers, and the farmer as well, to educate them. And I know my staff has heard me say this repeatedly, that with both of these programs, for me, it feels like it's a ministry. You're ministering to those guest workers who are here providing food for our tables. They're those workers who work for many years in Mississippi, and they're only home for 2 to 3 months out of the year. And they've been doing this for 20 years, 15, 10 years, as well as some of their family members. And again, as well as our local workers who don't have those corporate options of health care that we do. And that's why this program is very important.
And another way you can help as a business is to for us to create collaborations, for you to create collaborations with MDES to address the gaps in regulations in the H-2B program as well. And then that's it.
Any questions?
Yeah, next slide.
We did have some questions dropped in the chat. So one of those, Miss Eloise, on the H-2A visa, does the employer provide clothing?
No, the workers provide their own clothing.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And then the other one we received is, can she please repeat the act that Virginia covers in the H-2A program? I'm not sure if does that ring a bell?
That would probably be the migrant seasonal, the outreach.
Oh, the
that she
Wagner-Pizer Act. So my job is federal, obviously, and it's through the Wagner-Pizer Act that
It's funded through the
funded through
Wagner-Pizer grant, and the H-2A and H-2B is funded through the Office of Foreign Labor grant,
So-
two separate grants, but they touch the same workers.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one last question. We've gotten a lot of people talking about what great information. So thank you, ladies, again, both for doing this. We will have the recording up on the MBAT website, but there was a question on the slides. Would these be available for our participants?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can forward it to you and anybody can have access to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we did just get another chat. Where do we apply for the grant?
H-2A or H-2A?
Are they saying
H-2A
H-2A or
program?
H-2B?
It is not specified.
So it's just, I guess, say both.
Because anybody can apply for an H-2A application for workers, visa workers, guest workers, and H-2B. You can go to the Department of Labor website under foreign labor applications, and you can get the information there. But most employers use an H-2A agent because there's so much documentation with it. It's a very time-sensitive program, deadline driven. So there's a lot of paperwork and information that has to be uploaded into that flag system for the analyst to review in order for that employer to get the final certification of approval to go ahead and get those visa workers.
Okay. And then we've got a couple other questions from Ms. Deborah Martin. So the first one she had is, for the prevailing wage determination, is that based on the DOL's wage determination for other companies?
That's correct. They have to go to the Department of Labor, the H-2B site, to access that national prevailing wage.
Her other question is, where can we find Mississippi H-2B agents?
They are the same as the H-2A. So most of your H-2A agents do both H-2A and H-2B.
Okay, which that leads into the next question. Thank you, Ms. Eloise. We're getting a lot of good questions in the chat. So thank you. Is there a list of preferred agents to assist employers?
Well, we have some agents who file all the time through Mississippi. So the one that's mostly used in Mississippi.
We lost you again, Miss Eloise. Stand by, y'all. I think Miss Virginia's working on it. I apologize. I'll tell you what, since we're still working on it, it looks like Miss Virginia is or answering some questions in the chat. Is there a fee to use an H2A or H2B agent? Okay, awesome. I see you dropped that in the chat. Thank you for that. And then another one that we just received, how can a foreign worker apply to work in Mississippi? Is that through those agents?
If they're local workers, they can go on our website and they can look at agricultural applications and job openings, and it will give them the information to contact that H2A employer. But also the H2A employer, once in our system, it is set up that once a US worker looks at a job order and they want to apply, they click that button that says, I want to apply. At that point, an automatic alert via.
You hit me, Miss Eloise. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Once that US worker clicks that button in our system, it says they want to apply, that an alert, it's called an alert, is sent to the H2A employer to their email that's on their employer profile, and it will send a blanket email saying, Mr. Jones, that is another Mr. Jones wanted to apply for your job. So that employer, up until 50% of that contract date, is required to go into their account in Mississippi Works and to retrieve that U.S. worker's contact information and reach out and talk to that U.S. worker.
This has been phenomenal, ladies. I think we've.
And Mr. Clemmer, I see your comment. Miss Eloise is like literal genius on H2A. So you can contact her and she can help you through the just the steps.
Absolutely, because it's a very detailed program.
Yeah.
We just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Well, and I think I want to follow up on what Secretary dropped in the chat. Obviously we've seen that this is much needed, and y'all have provided a lot of great information. So as we move forward, if y'all are in communication with folks, feel free to reach out to us or to Eloise or Virginia. We're happy to help facilitate, be a conduit in any form or fashion. So yes, as he said, Eloise and Virginia are rock stars. So any last departing thoughts or anything else you want to share before we jump off? Once again, this has been great. So thank you, ladies.
So we want to thank you so much for allowing us to present. We want to get our programs out to everyone, anyone, all over Mississippi, especially outreach. I'm only one person, so I need as many hands and arms as possible to be able to reach all these individuals that need the help, that I can provide, that we can provide.
And anybody who's interested, we are posting 2 outreach positions on the state workforce, the state board personnel website. The other person that would be accompanying Virginia, someone who would need to be bilingual, but we do have an outreach position in the Delta as well for local U.S. agricultural workers that is not required to be bilingual. That one will be posted on the 29th this week. So anybody who knows somebody who is interested in helping U.S. and workers, agriculture workers and guest workers, and who can view it like we do as a ministry to help those workers, and also to our employers, because they need them. This H2B and H2A program is their guaranteed workforce, because we can't provide it anymore. Workers just don't apply for these jobs anymore. So in order for them to have this guaranteed workforce, we want to make sure that they're doing the right thing by that guaranteed workforce.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Everyone
Thank
have a great day. We truly appreciate all that you do for our
Thank
workforce, for our state, and for your ministry that you provide. So everyone have a blessed day, and hopefully we'll see y'all back here next month for our next webinar.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, y'all.
Love you. Bye.